Fáilte arás don sesiún áireachta do aine agus amárach. Welcome back. Fáilte arás to the session Heritage for Today and Tomorrow. I am not Rasich Sagitov, as you have in the program and the website. Our colleague from the UCLG Eurasia Secretariat has not been able to join us in Dublin. Unfortunately, if he's following from the streaming, our regards to our colleagues in UCLG Eurasia. Cultural heritage, including its tangible and intangible aspects, is a testament to human creativity as well as a resource for the construction of identities of people and communities. As with other components of cultural life, the aspects that make up cultural heritage, including memory and knowledge, pertain to the core of human dignity, and respecting, protecting, and enhancing them requires appropriate, rights-based, people-centered policies. The latter should recognize that cultural heritage is alive, diverse, and constantly changing, and that its components and meaning evolve and interplay with the other dimensions of sustainable development, including social, environmental, and economic aspects. This session will be dedicated to showcasing some of the multiple examples from our wonderful cities across the world that are working to strengthen the understanding of the place of culture and cultural heritage in contemporary society and sustainable development. It is a great pleasure to welcome Carles Sánchez Márquez, Director of the Candidacy of the Sea of Egara for UNESCO World Heritage, and Rosa Boladeras, Councillor for Culture of Terrassa. Benvinguts, Rosa and Carles. Initial question for you. What are the strategic priorities of the city of Terrassa in your cultural policy, and especially in your heritage policies? You have the floor, Carles.
Thank you, Jordi, and thank you all the organizers. En primer lugar, queremos agradecer la...
First, we would like to thank you for the opportunity to present our program, and especially our candidacy for the Sea of Egara for UNESCO World Heritage. In Terrassa, we are about 20 kilometers from Barcelona, and the sequence in history of this space starts way back in the early centuries after Christ, with the construction of a large complex with a cathedral, a funeral home, and a parish church in the 5th and 6th centuries. And we have important cultural traces of that time, and not only architectural, but also other aspects. We have very old examples of Christian painting in that from that period. And so it's an exceptionally unique complex. And so that sea has presented its candidature for inclusion in UNESCO World Heritage. And beyond that objective, we are also working on a project with three basic areas: civic participation, the digital transformation, and I would like to especially draw attention to a project of schools in that sea that wants to include the participation of the city's schools in that whole project, and so that schools become ambassadors, cultural activists. We work with the schools throughout the year, and on the 18th of April, we celebrate the International Day of Heritage, and the schools help us to spread news of our heritage. We want this Episcopal See to become more widely known, and we hope to explain more details of that. Thank you, Rosa.
Carlos, y gracias.
Thank you, Carlos, and thank you to all of the organizers of this wonderful summit. Carlos was explaining about the treasure that we have in Egara, and I want to explain what we're doing about that treasure. We established a stamp or a seal in the Department of Culture. It's a GAS. GAS represent three different aspects that are very important to us, as you see on the screen. G is that we need to work for equity and balance in gender, to recognize the importance of LGBT plus people with all different gender roles and sexual identities. A means accessibility, not only to eliminate physical and cognitive barriers, but also to eliminate economic and psychological barriers, also barriers of religion, of age, of origin. And so also the S is sustainability, respect for our environment and care for ourselves, in that we are all one. So we need to look at resources, waste, and every aspect of our lives. We work on the concept of culture as a seed. Why did we set up this seal, the GAS seal in Terrassa? Why? Because there is no project that we accept or sponsor or back in any way unless it bears in mind all three aspects. So we hope that this GAS seal or label helps us to be intersectional and holistic in our approach to culture. We want to break established patterns and change our whole model of what a city should be. We started to use this label 3 years ago, and we're still working on it. It's not a fast process. So GAS defends fundamental rights, and it involves many battles and many fights that we need to keep at. Feminism, fighting against patriarchy, LGBT rights, including all ages, self-care, self-esteem. These are all things that we must continue fighting for, because if we do not do so, we will not be able to find ourselves. We might end up, as in Argentina, voting for someone who's going around with a chainsaw and taking the chainsaw to things like culture and important human considerations. So this seal or label is like a tattoo on our foreheads that we want to include in everything we do. Thank you. A few seconds. Okay, thank you. I just wanted to draw your attention to three bases of our strategic plan: the therapeutic and health value of heritage. Doctors in our city are allowed to prescribe visits to the natural and heritage areas of our city. Art in its context as the second point, and the third point is to be daring, to dare to try to ensure with all this heritage that different narratives can live and exist beside each other. We want to have an immersive experience for all groups, And finally, I had 10 points of things we wanted to share. Maybe we can do that later on in the session, but I would like to finish saying that we are absolutely convinced that we should help to protect and grow the most valuable intangible heritage of humanity, and that is tenderness or care for one another. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Mr. Hao Zhongwei, Director General of European and Asian Department of the Chinese People's Association for Friendship with Foreign Countries. Why is heritage important in your work?
Dear friends, distinguished guests, good afternoon. It's a great pleasure to meet you in Dublin, one of European capitals of culture, to discuss the profound influence of culture on our future. On behalf of the Chinese People's Association for Friendship with Foreign Countries, I would like to express my heartfelt thanks to the UCLG Secretariat and the Dublin City Government for their thoughtful arrangement for this summit. Both China and Ireland have a long history and splendid culture. Irish literary giants Bernard Shaw, Wilde, Joyce, and Yeats are very popular in China, and the music works of Westlife, Enya, and the Cranberries have become household names in the heart of many Chinese youngsters. China, a nation-oriental country, has carried out cultural exchanges and mutual learning with our countries for thousands of years with the mind of the ocean is vast enough to admit hundreds of rivers, and devoted itself to building a diversified world of harmony in diversity and learning to discover the beauty in each civilization while benefiting from the complementarities between civilizations. In the world today, changes on a scale unseen in a century are unfolding at an accelerating pace. The world economy faces multiple risks and challenges, which requires the concerted efforts of all countries in the world. We should think deeply about how to endow the times with heritage to the benefit of our future generations. Facing the question of the times, Chinese President Xi Jinping put forward the Global Civilization Initiative, advocating the inclusive coexistence of different civilizations, carrying forward the common values of all mankind, and attaching importance to the inheritance and innovation of civilizations. In this way, we can make the exchange and mutual learning of civilizations a driving force for the progress for human society and a link for maintaining world peace. This is China's proposal on advancing world modernization and the progress of human civilization. As representative of local governments, we should think together about how we can help strengthen cultural mutual learning and cooperation to benefit our people. We advocate the respect for the diversity of civilizations by organizing cultural festivals, carrying out cultural exchange projects, and providing cultural education and training. We will guide people to respect cultural differences and appreciate different cultures so that cultural exchanges can transcend estrangement. Mutual learning transcend clashes, and coexistence transcend feelings of superiority. We advocate the common values of humanity: peace, development, equity, justice, democracy, and freedom are the common aspirations of all peoples. These values are the cornerstone of the development of human society and the foundation of cooperation and the development of the international community. Local governments should maintain an open and inclusive mind and work together to achieve the common development of all mankind. We advocate the importance of inheritance and innovation of civilizations. Local governments need to fully harness the relevance of their histories and cultures to the present times and push for creative transformation and innovative development of their fine traditional cultures and provide a steady engine for future development. We advocate robust international people-to-people exchanges and cooperation. At the largest and most representative international organization of local governments in the world, UCLG has played an important role as a bridge and a link to promote multilateral exchanges and cooperation among cities. This summit focuses on capacity building, showcasing city experiences, promoting a cultural boost, and linking culture with the UCLG Pact for the Future, which is of great significance and has far-reaching influence. The Chinese People's Association for Friendship with Foreign Countries, as the general coordinator for Chinese mainland member cities to participate in the UCLG, and the organization responsible for coordinating and managing the establishment of friendship provinces and cities between China and other countries, has long actively supported Chinese members to give fully play to their respective advantages, carry out cultural exchanges and pragmatic cooperation with the rest of the world, and help global cities improve their governance capabilities. Next year marks the 70th anniversary of founding of our association, and we will hold a series of celebrations such as the China International Friendship City Conference and the China International Friendship Organizations Conference. We sincerely welcome all of you to visit China to strengthen local government exchanges and cooperation in various fields, enhance friendship and understanding between the Chinese people and the people the world over, contribute to world peace and development, and jointly write a new chapter in human civilization. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Our next speaker is Fiona Winders, Development Coordinator at the Cultural Strategy Unit of the City of Malmö. Fiona, why do the people of Malmö decide to dedicate a monument to anti-racism? Can you explain why and the impacts of this monument?
Thank you, Jordi. Hello, everyone. It's very nice to be here in Dublin, which is a large part of my own cultural heritage, my father's birthplace, and the birthplace of many of my forefathers and foremothers. So it's delightful to be here. And I bring greetings from Malmö in Sweden, which is one of UCLG's leading cities for Agenda 21 for Culture. Thanks for inviting me to contribute to this session on heritage for today and tomorrow. What I have to say at the beginning may surprise some of you, but research and reports tell us that racism in Sweden is widespread and impacts upon many of our citizens, resulting in verbal and physical harassment, as well as structural and individual forms of discrimination. These manifestations of racism are evident in various aspects of society, including housing and employment markets, educational institutions, and healthcare systems. And two of the most common forms of racism are anti-Black and anti-Muslim racism. Racism affects not only people's living conditions, as we know, but also contributes to perceived and actual democratic deficits. In Malmö, since 2020, we have taken our first steps along a path of exploration to discover how arts and culture can be mobilized explicitly to combat racism, in particular Islamophobia and Afrophobia. The Culture Department's action plan includes developing events and culture that focus on racism and anti-racism, supporting anti-racist cultural initiatives and processes that already exist in the city, and, not least, creating the conditions for civil society to conduct culture programs against racism. And this last action provides the context for describing the ongoing work for an anti-racist monument. On the 1st of May 2019, Malmö's main newspaper published a call for the raising of an anti-racist monument to commemorate the victims of Peter Mang's acts of violence in the city between 2003 and 2010. You can see in this picture one of those commemorations in the form of an artwork on a bench where Peter Mang's shot at Malmö's main mosque. For 7 years, this man targeted and shot at residents who he identified as Black, Muslims, and Roma. During this time, many Malmö residents didn't dare leave their houses. In 2012, Peter Mangs was convicted of 2 murders and 8 attempted murders. Although his crimes were never prosecuted as racially motivated, he later confirmed in numerous interviews that he directed his violence towards residents of Malmö who didn't fit his idea of who is Swedish, based on names, skin, and hair color. Many people in Malmö were and are critical of the lack of support and acknowledgement for the racist nature of these crimes. No minute's silence was ever held, the Prime Minister never visited, and Mangs was never convicted for hate crimes. After he was caught and convicted, it all went very quiet. So the call for an anti-racist monument gained rapid momentum. In it, the initiators from civil society sought an acknowledgement that racism is a societal problem, needing collective efforts and common places where conversations about racism and anti-racism could take place. Therefore, they demanded a public gathering place in the city, a place where a monument manifests resistance to racism, a place where Malmö residents could process the racist acts that occurred in those 7 years. And what is important here is the initiator's clear vision that a work or works of art would be the bearer of discussion, stories of struggle, hurt, and grieving, a part of memory culture. Those of us from the city of Malmö and our partners from civic society who initiated the process fully understand that the raising of an anti-racist monument is only part, but is an important part of creating a relevant cultural heritage for Malmö. We understand that objects and places are not in themselves what is important about cultural heritage. Rather, they are important because of the meanings and uses that people attach to them and the values that they represent. And in this context, the symbolic worth of seeing and remembering a variety of lives and a variety of stories. As an explicit part of the work in progress for an anti-racist monument, reflected in the programming of talks, temporary exhibitions, performances and events such as guided walks through our city's public spaces, the question is posed: what experiences and fates are commemorated through statues, monuments and memorials in public space? Whose history is considered important in a society? The question of what and who is represented in the public realm is tied to the question of whose lives are considered valuable and thereby worth mourning and grieving for. The initiator's original call for an anti-racist monument not only expressed the intention of establishing a physical monument, but also signified a strong desire for discussion and collaborative efforts in creating ongoing memory work. And we began also to understand that the questions raised in the call for a monument cannot alone be answered through a permanent public work. So what has been the result of this work so far? The output from the city's collaboration with civic society has been twofold. Firstly, commissioning a group of artists to produce a programme of temporary works as an integral part of a public process leading to a monument. This programme, The Whole City is a Monument, happened in 2022-23. Secondly, producing an artist commission to find an artist or group to create the monument. The open call recently closed and 3 artists have been selected to work with a sketch. The monument itself will be presented to the public in 2025. So far, the main impact of this work has been a wider public discussion on public space, public art, and other material and immaterial aspects of Malmö's and even Sweden's cultural heritage. We have been able to join up our experiences and questions with those raised by other cities nationally and internationally to contribute to the collective pool of learning on creating public art and cultural heritage as a rights-based, people-centered process, a right founded in different experiences and memories, with respect to human dignity and recognition of identity. The impact we hope for and dream of is one that lies further ahead, where the conversation on racism and its effects is firmly placed in the material and immaterial public realm. For instance, we are developing a partnership with the city's schools departments to introduce the kind of cultural heritage issues we are discussing here today into educational programs for Malmö's children and young people, a task that is well overdue when we consider how many of them experience racism in their everyday lives. And through the project for an anti-racist monument, as well as a broader commission for anti-racist arts and culture, there are impacts for our department and the wider city of Malmö, including, do I have a few seconds more? Yeah. The public art has the potential to create social context, and you have to cut me off.
Yes.
Okay, well, I'm very sorry that you have cut me off.
10
but
seconds.
I would say that part of our reason for being here at the conference, at the summit, is to meet other cities who are interested in this kind of cultural heritage work. So if you have more questions or thoughts, you'd be very welcome to approach me or any other from the team of Malmö who are here with us today. And thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, Fiona. We have 2 minutes to collect 2 questions. 2 questions. I see Eva Soria from Barcelona and Ed Carroll that wish to take. If you can take the microphone, Ed, and then Eva. Not even 1 minute, please. Ed.
Yeah, I guess some of the presentations focus on cultural heritage as object. And I'm missing a little bit the idea of cultural heritage and heritage community as the people who organize the heritage. And my question is really, you know, how can we add on to this type of institutional management of heritage a more bottom-up process that's sort of projected in things like Faro Convention and Our House?
Thank you very much. That was clear, concise. Thank you very much, Ed. And then Eva Soria, you will have 1 minute each to reply to this question and to the question posed
Okay, I'll be
from
quick.
Eva.
Thank you very much for your
Say
very...
who you are, Eva.
Yeah.
Eva.
I'm Eva Soria from the City Hall of Barcelona. So thank you very much for these very inspiring presentations. And I have a question for Rosa. And you've talked about the gas seal. Can you give us just 1, 2 specific examples of what kind of projects meet this seal? That's it.
Thank you very much. I feel bad because, as I said to some of you this morning, we would love to hear each one of these presentations at least half an hour and then half an hour of questions and answers, because they all deserve, and the next panel exactly the same, deserve time to be understood. But please have these conversations outside. Consider this the peak of the iceberg. And now, please, Carlos and Rosa, if you want to use your 1 minute to answer the questions.
Vale, muchas gracias.
Thank you very much, Jordi. Yeah, we are looking for partnerships as well for the candidacy, so we can talk a lot afterwards. Thank you very much. As an example, very fast, with the GAS, in Terrassa, we had a pool of trans people looking for work. And from the Department of Culture and other departments, we try to hire, to the extent possible, these people in order to be able to satisfy the needs of equity. With the A, that was for the G, A, accessibility is the A. We are trying to hire or recruit teenagers from difficult special needs, different schools, trying to set groups. And with a drama theater and a philosophy teacher, they try to learn to manage their emotions through drama. And they do some cultural visits, trying to work on empathy, trying to generate empathy, and trying to move them away from these kind of psychopathies, which is what we get when we live in a very capitalistic world. Now, the S, sustainability. In every cultural item, we have an amount that has to do with a tree. So with culture, you are as well planting trees for the planet. Thank you very much.
Mr. Zhao. Mr. Zhao, do you want to reply?
En fait, j'aimerais plutôt répondre à votre...
In fact, I would prefer to answer your question before my speech on the role of heritage in my work. I work for an association that aims at the promotion and mutual understanding and friendship between people. And the ultimate task, of course, is to reach world peace. Our task is very simple. We must, first of all, understand each other among different people. We have to become friends. And once you are friends, there are no longer any wars. And in that sense, whether we talk about material heritage or immaterial heritage, it is key. And this is why, in fact, next year we're going to celebrate our 70th anniversary. And I've been working for this association for 30 years. And I know now that when we organize cultural events, how can I say, it's really the easiest way for different peoples, in plural, to meet and understand each other. If you have a Chinese tourist, for example, going to Paris, is going to see the Eiffel Tower, is going to see the Louvre Museum, and if a French tourist is coming to China, is going to see the Imperial Palace, the Temple of the Sky, and the Great Wall of China. So it's very easy to fall in love with another culture through heritage. And I'm not even talking about immaterial heritage, like opera, for example. So if you are open to another culture, it's going to give you the wish to better know the people, the nation, the way of life. And heritage is very important in my work with that perspective. Thank you very much. Fiona.
Respond to the first question, which is the example that I've given of a racist monument in Malmö is a people-led initiative to create a new heritage, it has come from civic society organizations and activists. So we are working more and more with the idea that the development of cultural heritage is not something that comes from here, but also, that comes from the people themselves to reflect the Malmö that they live in and their lives and stories.
Thank you very much. I think that the three presentations from Terrassa, the CPA FFC, and from Malmö, you have explained in your own words the place of human dignity in the evolving cultural heritage, tangible and intangible. Thank you very much. I invite you to leave the podium, and I invite immediately to join us Sandy Club, Xiao, Zhenju, Vincent, Bastien, Chloe Marcel, and Paul McMahon. And please, you can clap them, please. Sandy Club, you are the Commissioner of the Office of the Future Generations for Wales. Thank you for your participation in this panel. What is this Office of the Future, and why is your work relevant in terms of heritage for today and tomorrow?
Thank you very much. Shall I come up and use the clicker?
Please.
Is it okay? Thank you, and thank you very much to the organisers today. I'm really delighted to be here. So hello everybody, Shwmai, as we say in Wales, or Giagwich. I'm going to talk a little bit today about what we're doing in Wales and how we've legislated for the well-being of future generations and within that cultural well-being and heritage. I'm not, in fact, the actual commissioner, but I work in the commissioner's office. My role there is in involvement and making sure that we're hearing the voices of people all over Wales. So this legislation came into being in 2015, and we're delighted to be the first country in the world to have embedded sustainable development firmly within our legislature and to have embedded the rights of future generations. And we do this by placing a responsibility on our national government in Wales, in Cymru, and also 44 other public bodies, including all of our local government 22 local governments, and that when they make decisions, they must consider and balance the needs of current generations with those who are yet to come. So in doing this, we have put into place 7 well-being goals that you see in the circle there in the middle. And one of the things that is notable about this legislation is that we have embedded cultural well-being really firmly as one of those 4 pillars of well-being. And we've heard a lot today already about the importance of the interplay between cultural well-being and economic well-being, environmental and social. And in researching for this presentation today, I was happy to discover that the 7th wellbeing goal, which is a Wales of vibrant culture and thriving Welsh language, that goal was actually incorporated partly as a result of a meeting back in 2014, attended by Catherine Collen from UCLG, who I met this morning. And as a result of the conversations that happened at that meeting in Cardiff, that goal was incorporated. So as we see, that talks about a society that promotes and protects culture, heritage is mentioned specifically there, and the Welsh language, and which encourages people to participate in the arts, sports, and recreation. So within this legislation, we've also set in place 5 ways of working. And this is often, when I try to explain this to people who don't know about the legislation, just everyday people, of almost like the recipe for how you do sustainable development, that if you follow these principles, then you'll be on the right track. So thinking about preventing problems before they occur or get worse, such as climate change and poverty, working collaboratively between organizations and across sectors, integrating between different policy areas, involving people. And we heard some very good examples this morning in one of the sessions about doing that participation in really creative ways around culture. And then crucially for our office, that long-term principle of thinking 10, 20, 30 years down the line of people, for the rights of people not yet born. So we have a Future Generations Commissioner for Wales, Derek Walker. He's the second commissioner. They each sit in a 7-year term. And his role as commissioner, and then our role as a team supporting him, is to act as the guardian of the ability of future generations to meet their needs. So this legislation has resulted in many positive changes so far in Wales. So looking more broadly across sustainability, we've recently had a moratorium, for instance, on new road building in Wales, and a big shift of moving funding from road building towards active travel instead. We've remodeled our syllabus in Wales around sustainable development and the Act. And we've also redefined how we define prosperity and what success looks like in our economy, away from GDP and towards well-being. I'll move on in a moment to talk about some of the examples around culture and heritage, but a good example just down the road from me, there's a hospital within Cardiff and Vale Health Board who have developed a meadow on their site at the hospital. And then they use this space for social prescribing and for patients to go and be in nature, and then also engage with heritage, learn skills such as whittling and gardening and traditional crafts, and thinking about how, in that sense, engaging with heritage helps them. So we have 5 new missions in our new strategy, which you can find out more about online in Cymru Can. And I just wanted to highlight that one of those is around culture and the Welsh language. And we want to really promote and ensure that public bodies across Wales are fully engaging with and understanding what their role can be within culture and heritage. Geordie has given me the nod already, so I'm going to skip this next slide, which is detail about that mission that you can find on our website. And then I just wanted to leave you with some examples. So Cardiff Metropolitan University, we're working with in partnership at the moment on some really interesting research around how, for instance, climate change is set to affect heritage, and particularly our linguistic heritage in Wales. So it's mapping the effects of things like sea level rise on heritage sites, but also Welsh language communities and where they live, and Welsh schools. The Welsh Football Association has embedded the Act within their sustainability strategy, which is something they've chosen to do. They're not covered by the legislation, but they're inspired by it. And they've been really leading the way around things like equality with their PAUB campaign, which means everyone. So tackling racism and homophobia and sexism within what they're doing in football. And they've also been in a vanguard of organisations really role modelling around use of the Welsh language on their social media, and have adopted using the Welsh for Wales Cymru whenever they speak about our country through the medium of English. There are many good examples from organisations like Amgueddfa Cymru, the museum, that are looking at projects that the Malmo project reminded me of around documenting, for instance, the campaigns of Black Lives Matter and involving community organisations in being part of that evolving story of what our heritage is, who it means, what it means, and who gets to participate in that. So diolch yn fawr iawn. Thank you so much for listening. Guru Mahagot. Yeah, lovely to be with you today. Diolch.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much, dear Sandy. And apologies for pushing you with the time issues. Next speaker is Xiao Zhen Yu, the Executive Vice President and Chief Planner at the Xi'an Tourism Design and Research Institute. What are the connections between education, tangible and intangible heritage, and traditional culture in Xi'an? Do you want to come to the lectern? Yes, please.
Good afternoon, friends for UCLG. It's a great honor to be here today to introduce my city, Xi'an. This is a city have a long history and activity opening to the world. Tourism from all over the world come to here every year. If we search Xi'an on Google Earth, we will find it located in Asia and the center of China. Starting from Xi'an to Western, as the climate gets is dry. So, fortunately, there have a Western mountain, like as Tianshan Mountain and Qilian Mountain, regions the desert that extend to Central Asia. The rivers falling off the mountains made a lot of oases. Thousands of years ago, humans living these oases and moving from one to another. Until today, many of our cities are still built on these oases. The culture and business exchange between the Europe and Asia have never stopped in these green corridors. In the 19th century, this corridor was named the Silk Road. About 10 years ago, many cities on this corridor was included in the World Heritage List, and the name is Silk Road, the route network of Chang'an Tianshan Corridor. The Chang'an is an old name of Xi'an. As one of the most famous cities on the Silk Road, Xi'an has 5 World Heritage sites related on the Silk Road, including 2 ancient captains and of Han and Tang dynasty and 3 pagodas. About over 2,000 years ago, the Han dynasty have a mission from Chang'an to the western regions, which makes official opening the Silk Road. After the Han dynasty expressed war, China was once again unified and powerful in the Tang dynasty. This is about 1,500 years ago. The Silk Road was once again fully connected from Chang'an to Europe. In history, along the Silk Road, not only business, but also culture and philosophy idea in Silk Road was spread. In Tang dynasty, the eminent monks Xuanzang and Yijing from Chang'an went to India to study. Because then 3 famous pagodas was building and witnessed the cultural exchange of Silk Road. 1 minute. I'm sorry, time is very, very... in this time, I want to say, today, through technology, our world is more connected than ever before. We made a time of change and challenge. In the permission and unknown 20th century, I hope we can study from each other and building a friendship by the UCLG network. I believe it will enrich both our life and our city for future. Thank you very much. It's time.
Give more floor. Yes. Thank you very much. We will have some minutes for questions and answers, and you will be able to complete your presentation a bit later. We have taken off Dublin to Wales. We have crossed Europe and Asia to go to Xi'an, and now we cross the Pacific and North America to go to Vaudreuil-Dorion, and Vincent and Chloé will take the floor to explain to us what is your understanding of heritage and what place new heritage strategies play, and more explicitly the 405 and the caravan mosaic. And I have to beg you to keep the 6 minutes you have. Thank you. Merci.
Bonjour.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you very much, UCLG, to give us the opportunity to show our success for cities that have very different sizes. Thank you, Dublin, for your hospitality. Chloe and I are going to do our presentation today in French so that you can understand better the passion that we have for this. And I am going to challenge the interpreters to transmit the passion that live within us. And Vaudreuil-Dorion is a young municipality. It's about 180 years old and had 40,000 people with a very high rate of immigration and a very strong strength. And the preservation of our cultural heritage is very important for us, but it's also an opportunity, an important opportunity, because nowadays, since we are a young city, we have the option to build the heritage of tomorrow. We have the chance to mark history and the history of our residents by investing in new buildings, but also in investing in immaterial culture. This is very important for Vaudreuil-Dorion, and we want to strengthen our connections and create new human connections that may seem improbable. Preservation of culture means that we must, first of all, deploy strategies to sustainably show culture to our citizens. The cultural world is always evolving, and the challenges linked to the preservation of our cultural heritage is always on track, especially when we have new digital technologies available. We need to develop new strategies in order to preserve the human and link between our citizens. Another strong challenge is the intergenerational approach, and especially when there's a strong transformation. Ideally, when we talk about preserving the cultural heritage, we want to make sure that its conservation and its transmission becomes a way of life. To restore a way of life in the daily life of our citizens, you must have infrastructure, when you must develop tools and resources to facilitate this citizens' expansion. And the city of Vaudreuil-Dorion has taken on this challenge by using 3 tools or strategies. We have the Pact 405. We want to develop the Mosaic network, and we want to carry on a mobility project. It was very important for us to answer the challenge of accessibility, and this is going to be very important to support all actions linked to cultural sustainability. The 405 project is our first action. Yes, the project 405, you're going to be lucky enough to see it on the screen, is an urban park, and this was created during the pandemic because people needed spaces to meet. And we talked to the municipal authorities to develop this park. It's near water and nature, and our citizens created a magic recipe. The aim is to offer a magical site with art, with cultural diversity and discovery, and of meeting people. So it is an ideal park for temporary and permanent exhibitions. We have amateur and professional artists that can use the infrastructure and the programming promotion tools. And it is so well placed that we can have different exchanges between generations. The 405 is a cultural lab that is under open skies for artists and for all our citizens. The sky is always going to be there. We hope so anyway, in 200 years. But it is how we can organize this park that can evolve depending on the needs and the requirements of our citizens. Our second project is the Mosaic project. It is a cultural citizens digital platform where there is a citizens newsletter and where we can have celebrations of past events. It's also a bit of memory because it showcases our history. And this is why we have our Mosaic Caravan. And it is a cultural center that moves along and that goes directly to different districts and that talks and sees our vulnerable population. And that way, this mosaic is a way of broadcasting our project. And in the city of Vaudreuil-Dorion, our projects will be validated over time, over years, and it is our capacity to transmit this will of preserving our heritage to our community and to our citizens that's going to be the proof. Thank you very much. This is what we wanted to show you today.
Merci beaucoup, Vincent.
Thank you very much, Vincent. Thank you very much, Chloé. And we're now coming back to Dublin. We're back in Ireland, and I would like to invite here Paul McMahon. Paul.
You represent in ICOMOS the International Scientific Committee on Education and Training, and you have a PowerPoint presentation. UCLG and ICOMOS are partners in the Culture 2030 Goal campaign, and we signed an MOU in the last summit in Izmir. You have the floor. Thank you.
Thanks, Jordi, and thanks UCLG for the invitation to speak here today. Just to start off by saying a brief introduction to ICOMOS. Many of you, I'm sure, will know of the organization, but it was established in 1965. It's the International Committee on Monuments and Sites, and it has striven over those years to promote conservation ethic throughout the cultural heritage sector and to help to enhance public appreciation of humanity's cultural legacy in all its forms and diversity. As an advisory body to UNESCO, ICOMOS, in partnership with the IUCM for nature, ICOM for museums, and ICRAM for training, it endeavours to establish common global conservation principles. Not an easy task, I'm sure you'll all agree. And it's just to acknowledge that while throughout the 20th century, local heritage groups were strong advocates of community engagement with their cultural heritage, UNESCO's Convention for the Safeguarding of the Intangible Cultural Heritage in 2003 provided a strong support for the growing recognition of the significance of living heritage, technically called intangible. So that was the first time many of us heard this term intangible related to cultural heritage. I must say, personally, it's encouraging that the Republic of Ireland has, in recognition of the country's diverse rituals, stories, music, language, and craft skills, successfully signed up to the UNESCO Convention. So we're in there and up and running. And then another important step, this has been mentioned here many times already, another important step in advancing the community cause is ratification of the Faro Framework Convention in Europe. This convention, which is formally known as the Convention on the Value of Cultural Heritage for Society, was adopted by the Council of Ministers of the Council of Europe in 2005. So it followed on swiftly from the UNESCO Convention on Intangible Cultural Heritage. And like all, I suppose, of frameworks, the European framework, it goes, the UNESCO tends to primarily work on principles, but where Europe and other, well, I call them continents, look at the UNESCO convention, they're conscious that they need to specifically relate to the situations in those continents or countries. But it recognizes the rights of citizens alone or collectively to benefit from cultural heritage and to contribute towards its enrichment. Sometimes this sounds like stating the obvious, but I think it does need to be stated. So, in short, the Faro Convention is based on the idea that heritage should be used for the common good of society as a whole. It favours bottom-up actions and emphasises the leading role of heritage communities in cultural heritage management, presentation of heritage as a resource for human development, and an economic development model based on the principles of sustainable resource use. I know again it seems like stating the obvious, but it is good to have it stated. So what I want to do really today is to share with you a little bit of information on the background to our own Faro advocacy mission and the Other Voices and our Other Voices publication. In 2020, ICOMOS Ireland undertook research to identify community-based heritage projects happening across the island of Ireland. ICOMOS represents, it's an all-Ireland body, and it represents Ireland north and south that reflect the spirit and principles of the Faro Convention in practice. The publication is the culmination of this research. It features 15 case studies project from all 4 provinces in Ireland, and I just show a map of Ireland there and showing the range of projects we have. Yeah, just ready, okay. It aims to give a voice to those involved in each featured project in the form of personal reflections, stating what sustains them and their broader impact. The projects are grouped under 3 specific themes: people and place, living skills, and land use, shared space. So it's hoped that Other Voices and the featured projects will act as an inspiration for other communities and, more importantly, a stimulus for local and national politicians to recognise their potential for peaceful coexistence and conflict resolution. What I undertook to do was we can distribute copies of the publication and point you to the website where it can readily be accessed. But I'm just going to take the time to show you that last slide, which is it's a project in Cork City. And it's called Mehel Mara, and Jordi and others have introduced our native language, our Irish language, and this program, it's a training program for young people who are having difficulties finding their way in the world, and it's a boat building project, and nothing better than a shared exercise like this with a whole range of skills that they can learn. But just to say that Mehel, it's an Irish word for communities coming together on specific projects. Traditionally, this was done in terms of houses being built, and so cooperative ways. It's a very inclusive word. So I'd just like to end with that project. All of the projects are inspirational in their own way, but that's one that's particularly dear to my own heart. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Paul. We have now 11 minutes for 2 questions. We can collect 2 questions from the floor, and then I will give 1 minute to each one of you with an extra minute to Xiao, because I feel that I interrupted when you were beginning your explanation, so you will have 1 minute extra if it is okay. But first, please, if we can collect a couple of questions from the audience, if there is any. one question here. Can you say who you are? And yet.
Merci. Je suis Ferdinand.
I am Ferdinand Lefrancana from Brazzaville, from the City Council. The 3 projects presented by Vincent are very interesting. It's a great way of preserving human connections. So, Vincent, could you give us your thoughts and your advice on applying what you've done to other cities? I think that's my question. I'm going to finish it further. So what are your thoughts and advice in motivating such a project in our cities? We are going to do all the questions together. Another question here.
I'm a city councillor here in Dublin. A number of the projects we've seen here talk about future generations, or I saw children in boats and in the mosaic. There's an Urban 95 programme which Dublin is about to implement about making cities better for babies, toddlers and their caregivers. And I'm wondering how that cohort can be highlighted in the work you're doing, if you have an example of how we can cater for this group that don't always have the ability to tell us what they need out of the heritage and culture in their city. Thank you.
Thank you very much. If you can begin, Vincent and Chloe, because both questions were mainly addressed to you. But after that, please, Sandy, Paul, and Xiao, you take the floor too. Please, Vincent, Chloé.
On va juste se faire un caucus pour pas qu'il y ait de chicane, donc je vais prendre.
So I will start and then Chloe will continue. So for the first question is to do about using digital tools to preserve heritage. For us, it is a challenge, but it's also a solution, because what we introduced you to with Mosaic has a lot to do with technology. And really, technology, you can either ignore it or use it. It's really controversial, but what we decided on was to use it and make the most of it for our participants. So we use technologies to bring culture, whether it is to do with schools, to bring them to the citizens so that they can interact. It's not just the city providing information to the citizens, but it's citizens and artists who contribute to the information provided. So I believe it's a brilliant tool that way. If I were to talk about very, very young people, Mosaic, the caravan, allows us to go and see the public in that age, because we can go directly to someone's house with young mothers, for instance, who are breastfeeding. We get to go and see them with the caravan. So it's a great way to see them with the tool that we have. Thank you very much. Xiao.
Yes?
Yes. Okay. The one and second question is about young people. I want to say Xi'an have a lot of projects about young people, about world heritage. Xi'an have a lot of cultural heritage. So Xi'an have a plan and building the cultural heritage to a heritage park or archaeology park. When I do the plan, a lot of young people from university together discussion and do something for the plan. And it's very important. I am an ICMOS member, and she have a conservation center about ICMOS. So every year, a lot of young people, students, come to here, do volunteer, do something about conservation about playing. Xi'an have a lot of university and about 1 million students in campus. So Xi'an citizen can do culture and sports in the heritage park, and we think that young people is very important to the heritage, to the city. It's a future. Thank you.
Very much. Thank you. That was very clear. Do you want to take the floor, Sandy?
Sure, I will quickly. Thank you to come in on the question about how we can think about the needs of young people and babies in particular who can't advocate or speak for their own needs. So I think in the work we've done and public bodies we work with, it's really clear that doing that really close engagement and listening with caregivers and with parents is so important, especially given what we know about the importance of the very early years in terms of wellbeing outcomes further on. And there are certainly some organisations doing really fantastic work in terms of that really close listening with caregivers, in particular parents of young children with complex needs, etc. And then I think building on what Chloe and Vincent have described in their exciting sounding projects, some of the work I would draw attention to, for instance, with in Cardiff has been interesting. They've recently been awarded child-friendly status, and some of what they've been doing has really been acknowledging that need to provide spaces for children and their families. So, for instance, they ran summer of fun projects after the pandemic to provide opportunities for people to gather outdoors and just experience joy together. And then lastly, just to say that in terms of thinking about those needs, it's so important that we involve the voices of young people in thinking about the future. But one of the things that we often get questioned around is what about older people, and that kind of across the lifespan as well, and thinking about all our futures and aging well, etc. So yeah, thank you for the question.
Thank you. And Paul, do you want to take the floor again?
Yeah, well, I suppose just to say that, I mean, it's the whole issue of inclusivity, and it comes across strongly in the projects and case studies that we were looking at, that once you start to see communities engaging in whatever area of their local cultural heritage they're dealing with, it inevitably raises the issue of what do we do with the kids if you're dealing with, you know, the intergenerational one is very important, where you have skills being displayed to the one we found that one of the most interesting was the textile one, the lace working, where normally grandmothers were displaying the skill, and it would have traditionally been a female skill, but it was actually young boys who suddenly were taking up the bobbins and doing the work that was necessary. So I think by the nature of it, it raises that inclusivity issue that you're touching at. And also, I will give credit to Dublin City Council and the local authorities around the country that they often, through engagement with the local community centres, provide these type of supports. It's almost a given, as I see it. So I'd be hopeful that inclusivity will come to the fore.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I think that we have listened to excellent presentations with challenges at home, with challenges that are posed to all of us in order to make this heritage alive, inclusive, evolving for all. So we can close this second panel with a round of applause, please. And this session is finished. Please, in 10 minutes, we begin the other one, the next one, on cultural rights. But please, Rosa, Carlos, Fiona, and Hao, come to the podium to take a picture with all the panelists.